Welcome to the deep dive. You know, when we talk about financial bubbles, we usually look back. We dissect failures, like the dot-com era or the 2008 collapse.
It's history, right? Something we study.
Exactly. But today, we are not talking about history. We are talking about a massive gold rush that is happening right now. Maybe the most intense, most expensive one ever.
We're talking hundreds of billions, and soon, trillions.
All being spent on building the infrastructure for artificial intelligence. So the core question before us is, I think, simple, but it's also terrifying. Are we witnessing a true technological boon that will reshape the world? Or are we just watching a massive, irrational fever dream, that is? Oh, that's about to pop.
That is the central tension, isn't it? And it's at the heart of the sources we've gathered for you today. We are doing a deep dive into a very pointed warning.
Warning from who?
From one of the most famous, or maybe infamous investors of our generation, Michael Perry. His claim, and he just made this public on November 24th, 2025, is blunt. He says, Nvidia, the massive chip maker, is the modern shovel seller, exploiting an irrational obsession with AI.
The shovel seller. Okay, so our mission here is to unpack that analogy.
Exactly. We'll look at what that means, why Perry's track record is so terrifyingly accurate, and if the scale of this AI boom, and maybe more importantly, the financial structures underneath it, really do echo the collapses of 2008 and 2000.
All right, let's start with that historical analogy, the one Perry is leaning on so heavily. The gold rush.
Right. Mid-19th century.
You have to picture it. Hundreds of thousands of people rushing into what we now know as American California, the Hamhab State area. They're utterly consumed by this idea of striking it rich.
They spent everything, uprooted their entire lives.
For a dream. And that's the brutal truth of it, isn't it? Very few actually succeeded. Most historians estimate the vast majority of prospectors. They fail.
They didn't even find enough gold to cover their expenses. It was just a massive waste of capital and labor for the average person.
So the real lesson of the gold rush isn't about the people digging for gold. It's about the suppliers who equipped them.
Ah, the shovel sellers.
The people who got truly wealthy weren't finding tiny gold nuggets. They were selling the essential tools, the shovels, the tents, the durable clothes, to the masses who were obsessed with the idea of finding gold.
And the economics of that are just genius, because the tool seller doesn't need the prospector to actually find gold.
Not at all.
They benefit as long as the belief holds up. As long as people are convinced that the gold is worth the investment, it doesn't matter if the actual return, the real gold, is way too small to justify the cost. Their profit is guaranteed by the mania itself.
And that is precisely the analogy Perry is applying to AI right now. He argues that the biggest American tech companies have this unjustified obsession.
An obsession they're spending hundreds of billions on, soon to be trillions.
Right. Even though, and this is the critical part, the concrete evidence for a return on that investment is, according to our sources, very weak right now.
Which puts Nvidia in the perfect spot. They are selling the indispensable tools for this new gold rush.
The shovels.
The modern shovels. These highly advanced processors, the GPUs, that are essential for building the data centers and fueling this whole infrastructure boom. Nvidia doesn't have to worry if AI is profitable in 5 years. They profit massively right now just because everyone believes they have to buy the tool.
They are the single biggest beneficiary. And the market is treating this demand for their chips as, perpetual, guaranteed, essentially risk-free.
Which is why we have to take Perry's warning so seriously. And to understand why, you have to look at the man's track record.
Right, this isn't some random analyst.
Not at all. We are talking about Michael Perry, the person who famously predicted and profited immensely from the 2008 global financial crisis. He earned the name the Prophet of Collapse for a reason.
Okay, so let's get into that because it's a fascinating story. His big strategy started way back in May 2005. He was only 33.
And he saw the rot in the U.S. housing market. Specifically, he looked at subordinated mortgage securities. These were the absolute riskiest, bottom-of-the-barrel debt products.
And he started buying something called credit default swaps, or CES. He was betting against the housing market when the rest of Wall Street was cheering it on.
Now, a credit default swap, it sounds complicated, but really, Perry used it like a massive insurance bet.
Okay, break it down for us.
Imagine you buy an insurance policy on a neighbor's house because you think it's structurally unsound and is probably going to collapse. You pay a small annual premium, let's say, I don't know, $100,000 a year on a $100 million bond.
So you're just paying this small fee and waiting. It's an asymmetric risk, right? If the market holds up, you lose the small fee. That's it.
That's your only downside. But if the housing market collapses, which it did starting in 2007, and those bonds default, you collect the full value.
For a full $100 million.
And that's exactly what happened. His hedge fund, Sign Fund Capital, ended up winning $725 million when the crisis hit.
It's just an unbelievable number. And it wasn't just a lucky trade. From 2000 to June 2008, his fund had a return of, what was it?
489.3%. Staggering. He took the opposite side of the entire financial world at a time when everyone, from the regulators to the big banks, thought the mortgage sector was rock solid.
So that's the context. That's why when this man challenges the market's most prized stock, Nvidia people have to listen.
Even if they disagree. Goldman Sachs even called Nvidia arguably the single most important stock on Earth. Which brings us to the sheer scale of the current mania.
The numbers are just dizzying. It really shows why everyone is so focused on Nvidia. Since November 2022, around when ChatGPT launched.
Improved what was possible.
Right. Since then, Nvidia's market value has multiplied more than 10 times.
It is a truly unparalleled increase. To put that in perspective for you, on November 29, 2022, Nvidia was valued at about $385 billion.
Okay.
Recently, it shot past $3.4 trillion, and at its peak, it actually touched $5 trillion. We're talking about a $4 trillion increase in value in less than 3 years.
That kind of growth just isn't sustainable, unless something truly revolutionary is happening.
And what's driving it is this perception of endless demand, this relentless spending. Global spending on AI infrastructure was around $200 billion in 2024.
Which is already a huge number.
It doubled. It hit $400 billion this year, 2025, and projections say $600 billion in 2026.
And a huge chunk of that cash.
The vast majority, according to the sources, is going straight to Nvidia for their GPUs, because right now, they're the only game in town. Their position seems ironclad.
I mean, the CEO, Jensen Huang, said last October they have orders lined up for AI processors worth $500 billion.
$500 billion. And we see these huge orders, like the Saudi human company buying 600,000 GPUs.
So at first glance, this massive global demand seems to justify the valuation. The money's real. The orders are real. But
here's the but. Michael Perry is arguing this entire structure is built on one massive, shaky assumption.
which is what?
The assumption is that all this spending on infrastructure will actually translate into real corporate profits down the line.
Right. The market value reflects this extreme optimism about future returns, maybe 5-10 years from now.
But what if those returns never materialize?
Okay, let's explore those cracks.
Yeah.
Because this is the core of Perry's argument. What if the money spent today doesn't generate profit tomorrow?
The current indicators suggest that is exactly what might be happening. The research is, well, it's startling. An MIT study from August 2025 indicated that 95% of AI model adoption cases
95%.
had no positive effect on the corporate profits of the institutions using them.
Wow. So companies are spending hundreds of millions on these tools, and 95% of the time, they have nothing to show for it on the bottom line. No measurable profit, no efficiency gains.
If that trend continues, the entire reason for this spending spree just evaporates.
Yeah.
Overnight. Why would you approve another $10 billion data center if the last one yielded nothing?
The demand for Nvidia processors would just collapse.
As quickly as it rose?
Okay, but hold on. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
Isn't this just normal for a new paradigm? When the internet started, companies also invested a ton without immediate profit. But the ones who stuck with it eventually won. Isn't AI just in its awkward pre-profit phase?
That is the bullish counterargument, and it's a powerful one. But Perry and the other skeptics point to two major risks that challenge that idea of a guaranteed victory. The first is competition.
Meaning Nvidia can't stay on top forever.
A monopoly on advanced processors is incredibly hard to maintain, especially when your biggest customers are also the wealthiest, most innovative companies in the world.
Because they can just build their own, right?
Exactly. And the main threat is coming from these tech giants developing in-house processors. Look at Google.
With their Gemini 3 model.
Right. Introduced November 18, 2025. It's a leading AI model. And critically, it was fully trained and built using Google's own chips, their tensor processing units, or TPUs.
Not Nvidia's GPUs.
Not Nvidia's. And that caused some real anxiety in the market, even though Google tried to calm everyone down.
But the TPUs are a real threat.
They're a structural threat. They're designed specifically for AI, so they're cheaper, and they use substantially less energy than Nvidia's all-purpose GPUs.
And now other companies want them.
That's the key. Meta is already in talks with Google to buy their TPUs. That suggests the superiority gap that justifies Nvidia's huge price tag. It's narrowing fast.
This brings us to the scariest part of Perry's warning, because now he starts pulling in the echoes of previous crashes. He explicitly compares Nvidia to Cisco during the dot-com bubble.
And Cisco was the perfect shovel seller for the early internet. They sold the hardware, the routers, the switches that formed the backbone of everything.
And that boon was fueled by, outright lies. WorldCom falsely claiming that internet traffic was doubling every 100 days.
So companies believing this just wildly overinvested. Cisco became the world's most valuable company in March 2000, worth over $500 billion.
But the infrastructure they built, all those fiber cables and routers, it just far exceeded what the market actually needed.
So the bubble burst, and Cisco's stock collapsed. Perry believes the fate of Nvidia will be no different. He's arguing the AI infrastructure being built today, all these vast data centers, it's way more than what the market profitably needs.
Especially with that 95% failure rate to generate profit we just talked about.
It's like building a highway with 100 lanes when you only need 2.
That parallel to 2000 is bad enough. But the truly dangerous comparison Perry makes is not with the dot-com bubble, it's with 2008.
It's the financing, the complexity of the financial structure. This is where it goes from a market correction to a systemic financial risk.
Okay, what's the problem?
The problem is the sheer scale of the debt being created. Big American tech companies plan to spend about $3 trillion on AI infrastructure by 2028.
$3 trillion.
But their cash flows only cover about half of that, so they're being forced to use these complex, indirect borrowing methods to hide the debt.
This sounds exactly like the pre-2008 playbook. Hiding risk off the balance sheets to keep everything looking healthy.
It's sophisticated debt evasion. It mimics the pre-2008 mortgage structures. To take Meta, for example.
Okay.
They want to build a massive, say, $27 billion data center in Fusiana. But they can't put $27 billion in debt on their own balance sheet.
It would kill their credit rating.
Instantly. So they create distance. They partner with an investment company like Blue Owl Capital, which sets up a special purpose vehicle, an SPV.
A separate legal entity.
Exactly. That SPV borrows the $27 billion by selling bonds to investors. And Meta guarantees that debt with a long-term lease contract, promising to pay the SPV for using the data center.
No, the debt is on the SPV's books, not Meta's. It looks clean.
It looks clean. But here is the profound danger. If the AI bubble bursts, Meta might decide, you know what, we don't need this expensive data center. They reduce their use or stop paying.
And the partner, Blue Owl, can't pay the bond installments.
And who bought those bonds? Pension funds, banks, big institutional investors, they're all now holding worthless debt.
It's financial contagion. Meta's problem with one data center suddenly becomes everyone's problem.
Perry describes it as a setup that could trigger a financial crisis more severe than 2008. And that risk is compounded by one last baffling issue: circular funding.
Circular funding.
The tech companies are all completely intertwined. It's a closed loop of borrowed money that relies on future profits that might never appear.
So the cash just moves between the same small group of players.
We see clear examples. Nvidia invested $100 billion in OpenAI. The deal was that OpenAI would use that money to buy processors from Nvidia.
Okay, wow.
Then OpenAI contracts with Oracle for $300 billion in computing power. And Oracle, in turn, is a massive buyer of Nvidia GPUs. The money just goes in a circle. Nvidia funds OpenAI, OpenAI pays Oracle, Oracle buys from Nvidia.
But it's all funded by borrowed money.
Yeah.
It all relies on that one critical assumption that Perry's betting against.
That OpenAI and the rest of the AI sector will eventually make huge future profits to pay off this colossal interlocking debt structure. If that assumption is broken, the whole thing collapses.
Triggering simultaneous debt defaults across major tech.
And that is the core warning we have to take away. Nvidia's collapse is inevitable if the AI spending is unjustified. But the real danger is that Nvidia won't fall alone. Because of all this, it risks dragging the entire financial market down with it.
And that risk is absolutely systemic.
Yeah.
The Magnificent Seven, Meta, Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, and the rest, they alone make up over a third of the entire S&P 500.
So if the shovel seller collapses,
The rest of the market doesn't just feel tremors, it faces a structural earthquake. It is hard not to feel uneasy when someone with Perry's track record, who literally bet against the entire U.S. housing market and won, is now betting on this exact bubble bursting.
the implications are massive, and they go far beyond just stock prices. Which brings us to the final and most provocative thought raised in the sources we analyzed. It links this potential chaos to much broader geopolitical stability.
Do you think he was involved? The United States is in a severe financial crisis. China may be allowed to overtake it economically and militarily.